When you first start learning about chords and you start seeing all these different variations of it, I would say the most important note is the third note. Not the third in the chord, but the third note that turns it into a chord. If you have one single note, that doesn't tell you what that note is within the chord. It doesn't tell you if it's major, minor, augmented, and so forth. If you have two notes, also known as a dyad, that starts to give you a little bit more of a picture of what that chord quality may become, right? For example, if you have an E and a G, that might be the beginning of a minor chord. But as I will make the argument is, it's not until that third note that comes into play that it really sets into place of, this is what that chord is. And it can go further than 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, many more notes. And today, I just want to talk about those 3 notes, because 3 notes is what is the beginning of understanding chords and how they are built. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Royce Phillips Jr. I play the saxophone, and here on my channel we talk about saxophone. Right now we're talking about theory and different things around being a musician and musicianship and other things that I'm working on in my own musical journey. And today we're going to talk about chords. And so if this is the kind of content that you enjoy, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, because there will be more videos to come your way. So why do I say that the third note is the most important note in setting what the chord is? Let's start with the example E, G. It is a minor third, but depending on what note comes next will depend on the quality of the chord. So that is a minor third, but if you go just a minor third below that E, you have a C sharp, which now makes it a diminished triad. C sharp, E, G, right? So that's what I mean by that third note. That third note has now changed it from maybe it being a minor chord to now a diminished chord. Bring that C sharp down to a C natural, you are now playing a C major chord. So you have C, E, G. Bring that C down a half step to a B, and now you have the second inversion of a E minor chord. And so this is what I mean by that third note matters a ton. As you can see, by just changing just a half step changes that quality of the chord. Now, most chords, for the most part, end up stacking in thirds, as if you noticed. C sharp, E, G, those are threes. Then you have C, E, G, and then if you didn't have the B on the bottom but on the top, E, G, B, you have that chord quality. Now, I did bring up that second inversion, which is a different topic for a different video, and you can have different inversions of the same chord. But let's keep that B on the bottom, and we have B, E, G, making it a E minor chord. But if you bring down that chord, bring down that second note in the middle, that E, down a half step to what you would think as E flat, but in this context, it would be better to turn that into a D sharp, which is also known as an inharmonic. What is an inharmonic? Inharmonic basically means the note, when you hear it, sounds the same, right? You have E flat or D sharp. It's read differently, but if you play it, there's an E concert E flat, it's a concert D sharp. What makes that different is based on what that chord is trying to express, what direction it's going, and it also helps with readability of music. But you have now brought that note down a half step, and if you haven't figured it out, now you have an augmented triad, which is 2 major thirds stacked on one another. So B to D sharp, E flat to G. So then you have that stacked thirds, making it an augmented triad. Now, let's bring up that B back up to a C, and now you have a minor third with a major third on top, which now has made this chord into a minor chord. Now, you probably have noticed a trend that most chord qualities kind of are built on some sort of thirds. Either a major third on top of a minor third, which is a C major chord, or a major chord, or two major triads on top of one another, which makes it an augmented, and then a minor third, and then a major third makes it a minor chord, and then a minor third on top of a minor third makes it a diminished. So that is kind of like that solid basics of the thirds being stacked on one another. This is the beginning of you understanding chords. So it's those first three notes, that first structure there, that will then help you understand once you start stacking on more notes on top of that as well. But there is a couple of chords that kind of break that third rules, and those are called sus chords. And basically, sus is short for suspended. So suspended being that when you listen to that quality of the chord, it sounds like it's suspended. So you have let's go to C, and we're all back to C. The last chord we left on was the C, E flat, G, C minor chord. So let's bring that E flat down to a D. So now you have C, D, G, which is now a C sus 2 chord, which gives this quality of a sound. And it's usually used in different kind of cadences, and it's not usually something that you rest on, but it's like you'll hear something like this when you hear a sus being used. And so with that example, you probably heard it. It was the first chord, and the final chord of like these three notes is the sus4. So it's very common to have that sus4 to a sus2 and then to a major chord. Now you're probably wondering, well, what if I use these different notes in different ways and you stack them? You have these three notes that really give you the quality of that chord. And so these are just mostly 3-note triad chords. But you can even get into sevenths with just 3 notes because of what that third note is. So let's go back to that diminished chord where you have a C and an E flat and a G flat. Let's remove that E flat, and now we have the C and the G flat, which is a tritone. You have just those 2 notes, and that interval is a tritone. If you add the third note is an A flat, now you have an A flat 7 chord. So you have the A flat 7 chord. Now we're not going to talk about dominant chords in this video here, as that's a whole different thing in itself, but I just wanted to give you that picture of really 3 notes is just enough to give you that quality of the chord and understand, so that when you're reading these chord changes on a chord chart and you start noticing, by the way, you've probably noticed that I've had multiple symbols on some of these chords, and that's because depending on the lead sheet, the chord chart sheet, whatever that you're reading, some different people use different symbols, meaning sometimes you have a major, which people will use MA or MAJ or a triangle for major, and then there's some people who use minor as a small m or a dash, and so these are good things to kind of know that when something is major, minor, diminished, and augmented, what those symbols mean. So hopefully this gives you a introduction on what chord symbols are, what a quality of a chord is, why I think that third note is so important in a chord, as you can actually get a lot of just information from just 3 notes. And it just grows from there, but this is just the beginning of building off of that foundation of chords. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully it gives you an idea of what chords are, how to think of chords, and and use it in your own practice session or studying of chord charts and different things like that. Because the more you do this, the more you'll start to be able to quickly see the chords. So if you enjoyed this video or you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and YouTube will recommend this video for you here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.